Hello and welcome to your third or fourth, I've lost count, Bootstrap tutorial. If you've been following along, you should have something that looks like this. We have our data visualization, our Bootstrap navbar. We scale it really nicely to mobile, and that's good. Now, for your quarter project, you're going to need to make an interactive company profile. Now, the basic interactivity in Google Viz, this isn't enough. So let's add some more. Now, pretty standard interaction with company profiles is being able to let the user choose the time frame for the chart. So I think that's a good thing to show you, but you can really add anything. You could have somebody click a button and have the background flash and give the user epilepsy, whatever. Um, anyway, so let's go ahead and do the first thing I think we should do, which is change this chart. This is a pie chart. It's really good for telling how much pizza you ate. It's not so good for telling the stock price of a company over time. For that, we'd want a line chart. So if we go to Google Charts and pull up the line chart documentation, that's good. And here's the source code. First four lines all the same. The data here is a little bit different. So they actually put all of the data into one function, or into one line, which is what we're going to do. Because before we had add column, add rows. That was just to show you how it works. Let's put all of this into one type of call here. Now you can see how this is set up. The year is the x-axis, and then these two columns are for the two lines on this chart, but we only need one line, so let's go ahead and delete this third column here, because we only need one. Definitely don't need two. Okay. And we can also change the headings here. This should probably say stock price, and this is year too. Okay, so that's good. All right, and also let's see, the next part is options. They only have title. A lot of the options are the same. Colors, we don't need 5 different colors, that's for sure. But everything else, we can just keep the same. I'm going to just delete the background color for fun. We can change that later. And then finally, the last piece that we have to change is the chart call. It says new Google visualization line chart. We can't really make a line chart while we're calling for a pie chart, so let's go ahead and sub that out. And if you save and reload, you should see a beautiful line chart all ready to go. Look at that. Yay. It's a line chart. Okay, that's all good. Doesn't appear that we have a title on here, but that's okay for now. Anyway, so that's good. Now we need to set up the interactivity piece. So there's a couple things that we'll need to do this. The first thing is we can't very well have our data being hard-coded inside the drawing function because that only gives us one option. So what we're going to need to do is two things. We're going to need to pull the data out of the draw function and make it global. And the second thing is we're going to make a function that calls a different set of data based on the user's choice. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. Let's take all of this out, and we can put it right on top of the draw function. Okay, so if you save and reload, this should still work. Oh, no, it shouldn't. I lied. Oh, I see why it didn't work. So we can have data be its own, we can have data be its own variable here, but we still need to create the data table down here. So we're going to make a new variable called chart data equals google.visualization.array to data table, and that's where we'll put data. Great. And then in chart.draw, we'll change this to our new variable. Okay, now it should work. There we go. Good. Okay, so here's our global data. We're localizing it inside the draw function, which is good. All is according to plan. Okay, now instead of just having it hard-coded here, let's make this get this data from a function. So we need to write a new function that's going to create our data for us. So let's go ahead and make that. We'll call it function get data. And that's going to need to take an argument that specifies the length of time that we're looking at. Because if it doesn't, then we won't be able to add any interactivity. So let's call that data range. And then we set up our function notation. That's great. Okay. So inside this function, we need to create an array. And we need to eventually, after we're done populating it, we need to return it. And then our data piece here, we want it to call this function and assign the result of it to data. So that's just get data, and then we need to have it use a specific argument. So for now, we'll just have it call year. Let's just say year. Okay. All right, so we're passing year into the get data function. So let's go ahead and use that. So if data range is equal to year. So right now this should be true because the first global call we're using is for year. So let's use our old set here. We can say data array equals that. That's good. And then here's our, we should probably format this a little better. Just for organizational purposes. Great. Okay, so we have, inside our function, we declare a new variable. We say if the argument is equal to year, here's our array, and we return it at the end. Again, we haven't actually changed the functionality at all, just the code a little bit. Let's see if it still works. It should do the same thing, and certainly it does. Okay, great. So if this is going to be the data range specified for a year, we should probably change the data itself. You know, let's have it be all the months in the year. So you can use any data you want for this. I'm actually just going to make it up. But I encourage you to use real data because this is for your project. And using real data is highly suggested. But then again, we could be like stockbrokers and just make the numbers up, because that's what they do. So I'm going to pause the video now and populate the values, and you can unpause it when you are ready. With yearly data, again, we haven't changed anything in the functionality here, but let's just make sure it still works. Certainly it expands the chart, and here is our new stock price for 1 year. Looks like something really bad happened in the month of August. Probably should look into that, but anyway, so that's good. All right, so we have the basics for how we're going to do this down. The next piece is we need to add the ability for the user to change this argument and change, you know, what chart's on the page. Okay, so to do that, we need to add in some buttons. So let's go down to our HTML. We'll add in a new row in Bootstrap. We'll add in a new column. Don't need an ID this time, though. Okay, inside that column, we need 2 buttons. And Bootstrap buttons are a little bit different, so let's go ahead and check those out. We need to go to Get Bootstrap. Okay, it's good to use the Bootstrap buttons just because they're very pretty. So if we copy one of the button calls here, we'll be able to use that. So Bootstrap buttons is a button of type button. Their classes style it. And on most stock pages, the way that it works is it's like, you know, for half year or for full year, you do 1 year, and then we need another button. And for half year, it's like 6 months. So let's make half year be our other time frame. Again, you could have it be anything you want. So that's good. Okay, so we have 6 months, we have 1 year. Now, in our data structures, we already account for the data range being year, but what if we wanted it to be half year? You can do else if data range is equal to half year. Okay. Similarly, we'll need almost an identical data array, except this is going to need to change to January 1st, January 15th, February 1st, February 15th, March 1st, etc. Okay, so you guys do get the idea, and you know, obviously this isn't perfect because we'd probably want it to be 6 months, you know, previously from today. That's how most of the websites work, but that's okay. Again, that would be fairly simple to do, and we're not really grading on that. We want to just see the interactivity. And I'm going to make up more stock price numbers because, hey, remember that's what stockbrokers do? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're just making up numbers. Again, I encourage you to use the real data. I'm not going to just for the sake of time here, but that's okay. You definitely should on your project. And good, okay, we're done. So we have if the data range, if the argument is half here, we're going to load this. Okay. Now the problem is every time we call this draw chart function through here, it's going to use this data. So we need to make a new function that happens when our button gets pressed. Okay, we need a new button pressed function. So let's go ahead and make that button pressed. And this needs to take an argument of, like, we'll just call it the button title. Whatever button was pressed, we need to make sure that we take that as an argument. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's link our buttons up to that. If you remember, the way that you do that is you add an onClick property, and then in quotation marks, it's button pressed. Now, this is a little tricky because if you just type year in here, it's actually going to try to reference a year variable, which doesn't exist. So you need to do the single quotes to make it the string literal. Okay. And we need the same thing down here, but instead of year, we want half year. Great. So now when we click these buttons, it should go ahead and link up to button pressed. Let's go ahead and make sure that they're there first. I see buttons. They don't do anything because, well, there's no code here. All right, let's think about what we have to do in button pressed. So first thing is we have to change this data. So let's go ahead. This is a global variable, data, up here. So let's just go ahead and set data is equal to, and we still have our getData function. It's just we want to, instead of say year, we want to say whatever the value of button title is. So this should say getData button title. That way, whether they press year or half year, we'll still be able to get the right data. Great. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to set a new set of options. Okay, so similarly to how we did this here, we're going to make our options global as well. Okay, that way we'll be able to access them, because I'm assuming you're going to want the same options no matter which time frame your user selects. Okay, this way we'll have them available to us no matter what. And of course I didn't copy all of the code there. There we go. Okay, so this way we'll have the same options whether the user sets the time or whether it's the first time, which is good. That's good practice. Good. I'm going to get rid of this because it's confusing. Okay, very nice. Okay, so finally we need to make the calls to draw the chart. Nope. Just like in here. Okay, so we need to create the data table and then the chart. Okay, same thing, same thing. Let's see if it works. Okay, here's 6 months. Here's 1 year. 6 months, 1 year. Okay, so that's some basic interactivity. You could follow the same steps, add in your data option, add in a new button with a new onClick value, and that's all you would have to do to add more options to the user to customize what they're seeing. And again, you could even make it 6 months previous from today and 1 year previous from today. That's all based on the data that you use. But that's enough for now. So you should be able to figure out how to add some basic interactivity into your Google chart and into your Bootstrap project. And I hope you enjoyed it, and happy coding!